a lot of the challenges that young people, particularly from like migrant backgrounds, might face, or places with high crime rates, poverty, and having the choices between going to like see friends and there was a lot of drugs or crime, or wanting to do bad was kind of good and cool.
Yeah. My family grew up, my background essentially really, I'd seen a lot of crime. I'd seen a lot of people go down some really bad routes. I'd seen people get involved in drugs, alcohol, all kinds of things. I just knew that it wasn't an option for me.
Why?
Because I just felt like I had more to give to the world and I had more to offer.
Naomi Hulston is CEO of Catch22, leading a team of 1,500 staff and volunteers to support 160,000 people nationally every year. In both the public and private sectors, Naomi has more than 15 years of expertise in strategic and operational roles. She has worked at Catch22 for more than 20 years and held 14 different positions throughout that period, rising from volunteer to Chief Operating Officer in 2017. Naomi previously worked on programs providing and managing youth work, early intervention, and preventative services for young people at risk of social exclusion. Naomi is a board member of London Sport and part of the Youth Endowment Fund's Governing Committee, which aims to identify what works in preventing young people from becoming involved in youth violence, and is also a trustee of London Sport.
I mean, for you, given your life experience, your early volunteering and your whole career, I mean, what does social justice mean to you?
It's equity, it's inclusivity, and it's not just like that kind of lip service, tokenistic kind of, stuff that we've all been listening to for the past. It's about people being able to wake up every day and feel like they are something, that they are worth something, they mean something. They have the opportunity to contribute to the world on the basis of their knowledge, skills, talents, that they're going to be taken care of, that they're going to be looked after in hard times, that they're not going to be discriminated against or abused on a day-to-day basis.
All right, so Naomi, thank you so much for welcoming me to Catch22. It's really wonderful to be back. As you know, I used to work here back in 2013, 2014, so to come back a decade later feels like a really lovely experience to be welcomed back. So thank you for your time. And amazing to see the journey you've gone on personally to now leading Catch22 as a CEO. I've been kind of in admiration of your journey, so can't wait to share your wisdom and learnings and experience with our students who are watching around the world. First off, it would be great to kind of hear about yourself and what you do at Catch22 and a bit about the organisation.
Thank you, Alvin. It's great to have you back. It's a long time coming. I do recall you working here all those times ago, and it's also awesome to see what you've been doing with the School of Social Justice. So yeah, thank you for coming back to talk to us about this topic. It's a really important topic for us, and I know that it's a topic that you guys are particularly passionate about, and anything we can do to support young people and their development progression in this area is equally as important. So name's Naomi Hulston, currently Chief Executive of Catch22. It's been a long road. I started my career as a 17-year-old actually in southeast London on the estates of Elephant and Castle. So a young lady growing up in London, was always kind of really conscious of what was happening around me from a kind of social context, and what was happening in the lives of my friends, my family, my community, and I just didn't like what I saw. We're talking about huge housing estates with high levels of neglect, high levels of inequality, deprivation, people just feeling hopeless, feeling like they don't really have a stake in society or have no real idea about how they can progress and develop their lives or make a contribution. So I guess even back then, that young, I was quite conscious and aware of some social problems and what was happening for people, and it kind of gave me that drive and passion to want to get involved and find ways to help. And I saw kind of some of the older young people doing really positive things, like volunteering and just participating in activities that made them feel happy, that made them feel connected, doing positive things with their friends, rather than some of the more negative things that you would see and or hear, particularly in those areas. There was a lot of gang issues back around then, a lot of youth crime, young people involved in all kinds of things that sometimes it was hard to find a contrast or see, a positive. So when I came across this group of slightly older young people who are volunteering and designing and developing programs for themselves, I felt quite inspired by that. And they asked me if I wanted to participate by helping out in one of the homework clubs that was being run. So the organisation back then was part of Catch22's history, Crime Concern.
So even back when you were 17, it was Catch22 immediately?
Well, yeah, absolutely. So we're talking early 2000s, 2001 when I first got involved. The local project was called Kickstart, and it was managed and overseen by Crime Concern, which is an organisation that's a former part of Catch22. And it was all about estate-based youth work and working with young people in estate-based contexts. And they asked if I wanted to volunteer. I wasn't really very musical or very arty or very sporty. So I kind of got put in the kind of education or informal education bracket, and that's where the kind of, homework clubs and the computer clubs back then, it wasn't even called social media or internet clubs, because we barely maybe just got on the internet type thing. Never mind, social media wasn't really a thing back then. I think if anything, we just about had MSN.
MSN Messenger, those days.
Yeah. And I'd go in there and just hang out with the kids and, make sure they were safe online. I think that's a whole different world now, but then it was, helping them access online, helping them, complete their homework tasks and think about their own education. And it just inspired me that they saw me as an educator, and they saw me as somebody to look up to be, a positive role model. And it was, it kind of felt really empowering to know that I was doing some good. So from there, opportunity to do my level 1 in youth and community work. And that was like a residential-based program. Go and learn all about, the techniques and the basics of youth work, how to engage young people, how to understand the context in which young people live. So, what's happening in their lives, how to help them move forward. And through that, I just really developed a passion for working with young people and helping to see young people move forward. So I know you can edit this. I suppose I woke up feeling a little bit rough this morning.
Yeah. If you need a break, let me know. I mean, the thing about, I never knew that part of your story, and when you were speaking, it just reminded me of that bit of growing up in London, and a lot of the challenges that young people, particularly from migrant backgrounds, might face, or places with high crime rates, poverty. And just when you're describing the people, it reminded me of when I was growing up in Plaistow as well. And having the choices between going to see friends, and there was a lot of drugs or crime, or wanting to do bad was kind of good and cool. And then seeing some other kids who just said no and did the other thing. And it's interesting that you had that choice as well. Because there's many young people who will be watching and thinking, well, there's different influences, not only in person now, but also online.
Absolutely.
And so the hope with the School of Social Justice to show folk that there are people like yourself who started where they are now. And so education for you was a big part as well in terms of taking the next step into what you're doing.
I mean, my family grew up, my background essentially really, I'd seen a lot of crime. I'd seen a lot of people go down some really bad routes. I'd seen people get involved in drugs, alcohol, all kinds of things. I just knew that it wasn't an option for me.
Why?
Because I just felt like I had more to give to the world, and I had more to offer. And I never wanted to be, I didn't want to live in fear or be scared. I didn't want to contribute to more hurt or more violence or, more people feeling bad.
Was there a moment when that happened, when you kind of faced that choice?
I think I kind of reflect on it about, after I left school. So I grew up in, I was born in Birmingham, and then I spent about 4 years living in West Sussex in Crawley. It was a very different environment to living in London. So I came to London when I was 13. And it was absolutely mind-blowing. How much aggression there was, and, how unfriendly it was, people laugh about it when they say, people used to queue up at the bus stop and all that stuff. Seriously, that is how I grew up. So when I came to London, for me, it was really stark how challenging it was to be a young person, how much negative influences or attention were around.
Yeah.
So I'd seen something different. You know, I appreciate not all young people get to see, you know, different parts of life because they have grown up in, you know, communities where they've never necessarily lived somewhere else. So I, as well as knowing that, you know, there was these kind of things that would, you know, harm my life, I also knew that there was a sunnier side to life that existed, you know. We should be able to wake up in the morning and smile and be happy and know that, you know, you've got good people around us. Catch22 has something called the 3 Ps, you know, that we've got good people, we live in good places, that we've got purpose, you know. So I always had
3 Ps again?
3 Ps, people, place and purpose,
okay.
I always felt that there was more to life than, you know, I'd call it the degradation that I see every day. So I knew that I had a choice.
Okay.
What I didn't know was how to execute that choice, or how to navigate in, you know, this kind of society in inner city London, how to navigate through that. And that's where the volunteering came in, and that's where, you know, meeting other people who were like-minded, you know, enabled me to really build upon that and thrive under those kind of, you know, conversations, experiences, you know, learning opportunities, hearing people's stories, being amazed by people's creativity. We did this really awesome event. I've actually still got the album. You'll laugh about it. It's a great album.
What, like
actually.
photo album? Or
No,
like music
a music album.
Okay.
It's a 20-odd track album. We made it back.
Are you what were you doing there? Producing or like singing or rapping?
No, I don't have any musical talent. I was like, the group was called SC1 Love. So SC1 as in, you know, postcode, because everything back then was about, it was more about trying to make a positive connotation on postcodes rather than, you know, this negative postcode kind of war thing. And SC1 Love was basically a group of young people from SC1 who wanted to do something different. It was like a little movement. And they worked with the local youth organisations and the local councils actually to consult young people on how the area should change. So if you remember Elephant and Castle, used to have tunnels underneath it outside the station.
Very, very different to how it is now, just in terms of order regeneration. That's
absolutely. So, but that was quite scary for young people walking through there. You know, you potential to be a victim of all kinds of things. Just in that zone alone was quite high. So the council funded the young people to consult other young people about what they wanted the area to look like. And as a result of that, the tunnels are no longer there. And that was young people basically saying, you know, that's a breeding ground for us to be robbed, this, that and the other. But the other part of that program was that they used their kind of networks, connectivity, their own skills and their own talents to create an album. And the album essentially gave positive messages to other young people about, you know, moving through difficult times. There's challenges to policymakers on there. There's challenges to government, etc., around their experiences. And my role really was to facilitate, help make it happen, you know, a bit like nuts and bolts. It culminated in an event at Ministry of Sound.
Okay, so
where,
this is a big thing.
Loads of young people from across Suffolk and Lambeth came together to obviously party hard, but also to hear really positive social messages and to, you know, be recruited, I guess, into the kind of youth work family and into the socially conscious and socially aware kind of family. So yeah, I've still got the album.
We need to play that as like background music. I mean, I think what I love about that example is that it was rooted in community, in real people, all involved, but also others welcoming people. And also it led simply through listening and acting to a real change, which came about because young people stood up and said what they felt fearful of and what they wanted to change.
There was also a rejection, I guess, of the negative elements of youth culture, you know, and a kind of push to be seen to be positive and to be seen to be, you know, capable of making change and for making a real contribution. Like, take us seriously. You know, we're not just gonna have pool in a youth club on a Friday night. You know, we're gonna do big events. We're gonna make stuff. We're gonna, you know, communicate. I ended up going to talk in the Houses of Parliament around how these programs should be paid attention to by policymakers and why it's important that we give young people the opportunities to have a voice and to demonstrate the positive sides of them and not just the negative sides we sometimes see in the media.
Yeah, I'd love to kind of talk a bit about kind of the methods and the means through which we can achieve those changes. Just before we do, just a bit more, I'd love to know a little bit more about kind of what your perception of social justice is. At the School of Social Justice, we take a very simple view that it's about helping to make society fairer. And our vision is to create a world where anybody can learn how to make a difference, no matter their background. I mean, for you, given your life experience, your early volunteering, and your whole career, I mean, what does social justice mean to you?
It's equity, it's inclusivity, and it's not just like that kind of lip service, tokenistic kind of, stuff that we've all been listening to for the past, God knows how many, 60, 100 years or whatever it is. It's about people being able to wake up every day and feel like they are something, that they are worth something, they mean something, that, they have the opportunity to contribute to the world on the basis of their knowledge, skills, talents, that they're going to be taken care of, that they're going to be looked after in hard times, that they're not going to be discriminated against or abused on a day-to-day basis. Social justice for me is about recognizing social sciences, essentially. There's scientific research departments for all kinds of things. Social sciences is one of them. The School of Sociology, Psychology, all of these things are about us as humans and us as people. And you can't really have a world that's prosperous or productive if you don't have good, positive social kind of health. So social justice for me is about seeking that kind of, progression to social health, social well-being.
I mean, that's really powerful. And I think one of the questions, though, and the challenges back to people who kind of want to help achieve social justice is that, why should we care? Particularly in a world where there's an economic downturn, people are turning to themselves, they're like, let me just take care of myself, why care about the rest of society or strangers? I mean, what do you say to folk who kind of, because that takes place in terms of where governments invest, or whether or not businesses contribute to, giving some of the charitable donations or being philanthropic. What do you say to those challenges in terms of?
That's a really good one. Firstly, I think we need to really understand. I think we don't give enough attention to understanding why these things exist in the first place.
Okay.
So, when you think about this kind of like, why should we care about everybody else? Why shouldn't it just be for me? It's a dog eat dogs kind of world. It's like, okay, great. Where did that come from? That comes from this element of, survival. I want my race of people, my family, whatever, to survive. So therefore, in order to do that, we've got to, hoard and hold on to resources, wealth, land, knowledge, whatever it is. It comes from the need for security and stability, and that's like the very real historical kind of, context of it. When you really understand what that's about, you can understand why people have got to where they are. However, I would argue that there's a couple of things that really demonstrate the fact that it doesn't really matter where you come from. Doesn't matter what your background is, what your colour is, what your gender is. You're not immune to it. And that is the pandemic. That was a fantastic example where people from all different walks of life, all different backgrounds, socio-economic backgrounds, races, etc., were highly and heavily impacted by something that was external to us. Another one, look at Turkey and Syria, what's happening now, 42,000 people. You don't know when something's going to hit. You don't know what something's going to happen. Do you know what I mean? And just because, you might have a higher socioeconomic background or education or, whatever it is, more wealth, it can still impact you too. And it's the case of knowing that you have to turn around and say to yourself that you're no better or no greater than somebody else. There's been so much research in history that tells us, that all of the things that created inequality are void. They're nonsense. This thing around black people are inferior, whatever it is that led to this, element of racism, it's all been discredited. Now that and even the same for women, and there's the discrimination against females, it's all been discredited. So when something is discredited, it becomes abusive, because now we know. Okay, it's not just some ignorant thing that people are running around doing. When you move from a state of ignorance to knowing, and there's been significant discredit of that, you're essentially moving into a situation where you're continuing to do it. So therefore, it is abusive. Once you know better, that kind of thing. So ultimately for me, you know, when I look around the world, you can see so many examples where people are, you know, have had it all. They've had the wealth, they've had the status, they've had the fame, and in the next minute they're no one. It's taken away from them. And that for me is a real big imperative as to why, you know, it can't just be about you, because where you think, you know, you might be immune to these situations, you're not. The second thing I think is around this kind of recognition that together and, you know, like harnessing the power of us is actually more powerful, right? So take a look at the world, you know, it's eroding as we speak. Global warming, climate change, impact on the environmental ecosystem, impact on us as human beings, you know, the quality of our air, our oceans, all of that stuff. You see it in the news every day. People are desperately worried and concerned about the state of the planet. What contributes to the state of the planet? Humans, you know? And in that, are we getting any healthier? Are we getting any better? So when you have a planet that's sick, you have people that are sick, you have reduced productivity, you have reduced ability to contribute to doing good things or to, you know, changing our lives, our futures. And by not investing in, you know, people, therefore you're not investing in the planet, you're not invested in society. You may as well doom humanity to you know, to nothingness, really. So it's about what life do we want for our futures? You know, what kind of world do we want to live in?
Yeah, I love that. This idea that we're all kind of contributing to the world we live in, and, you know, it can have negative or positive connotations. I mean, the example you share is like, I remember one time, you know, being in Plasto, and at the time I used to carry a knife because it was for protection. And also this kind of sense of being a young teenager thinking that's what made me a man, to kind of like be a threat. And that was the thinking and philosophy there. And then there were points where I could have actually been violent. And I remember just looking back, the choices I had to make when we're about to have a fight, and like, and all these little choices that we're making as young kids can shape our future. But the thing that I always remember was my little cousin, well, he's no longer little, but he's 4 years younger than me. And one day I'll come to his place, and I think we were playing Pro Evo at the time, when Pro Evo was still the thing rather than FIFA. And he was like, Kuya, which means big brother in Filipino, can I get a knife? So I'm like, I had to convince him about why that was wrong, and in doing so, I had to face the mirror and say, actually, why am I doing it? And therefore convince myself to stop doing it. I think the big lesson is that we don't know the impact we have on others. And actually, you going and volunteering, you probably influence so many people in the same way now you do, and it's something you've continued.
Well, that's why I talk about social sciences and sociology, right? So these are disciplines that exist within the world, just like education, just like law, you know, just like science, etc. They're disciplines that exist, and there's so many sociologists that have done great research. You know, they've studied, you know, people, humans. We are the biggest contributor to the ecosystem of this planet, if that's through wealth, you know, creation, if that's through improvement of the environment, whatever it is. We're the biggest consumers of the world's resources, but we're also the biggest users, if that makes sense, you know. So if you think about sociology, why don't we focus on studying humans? And that's what sociology does. But we see a lot of reports, we see a lot of research over and over again on the same topics. I mean, go and have a look at how many reports there are on knife crime. I'm sure you probably find about infinite. 560 million or something. You know, I'm sure they probably all have a similar thread, say the same thing. How many more research reports do we need? How many more, you know, reviews on this perspective? But if you take social sciences as a discipline, you take it very seriously, and you say, actually, this is really important to the progression of us as people. It's really important to helping people understand the impacts of their behaviour. So that example you just gave about your little brother, it's like people don't know what impact they're going to have on the world.
That's it.
Right? You do now. Your generation does. So now every child that's coming up needs to know what that impact is, honestly and genuinely, because you've had enough observation, you've had enough experience, the reports have backed you up, it's been written about for 100 years, we know now, yeah? And it's that ignorance, I think, that's really blighting us, or that maybe it's in the too difficult box, you know? But I genuinely feel like a real focus on us as humans, us socially, what impact we have on others and what impact we have on the world, would go a long way.
Yeah, and it kind of brings it to reality that sometimes when we talk about social justice, we think of these big problems. They seem so intractable, or like, you know, abstract. How do you do? But actually, it's about your everyday actions. And I'm curious because, of course, you know, when I was here 2013, 2014, starting off here at Catch22, I was just kind of astounded by the kinds of services that Catch22 has delivered and still delivering. And it's a very particular kind of set of lessons I feel like our students can learn about what it means to respond to these kinds of problems with real people on the ground, backed up by research and backed up by a philosophy around the 3 Ps about being essential. I mean, it would be great to know about the methods and means through which you employ as a person throughout your career, but also at Catch22 to address these big problems.
Yeah, it's a great question. I think there's lots of different ways that we do it, but namely, particularly as you said, it's our philosophy. So 3 Ps, you know, you can't live in a world where you're not connected, you know, with people. People thrive off of people.
Yeah.
And we talk about, you know, isolation and loneliness and what that does to people's creativity, to their engagement or their contribution. So, you know, part of that philosophy, people, place, purpose. Okay. People have good people around them, right? So whatever we're doing, we're trying to build relationships with people and then help people to build relationships with others. So it's kind of like an integrator role, you know, connecting like-minded people with like-minded people, or connecting people to the help and support they need. You know, just for purely and simply, you know, connecting a young person who has a passion for football with a football coach. It's, you know, it's just as simple as that. And making sure that people know where to go for help and support when they need it. Place, that's, you know, everybody talks about the old broken window effect, you know. If things don't look good, if they don't feel good, people won't treat them well. You know, so it's really encouraging and striving for places, environments, homes, places of work to be, you know, positive and supportive. And purpose, you know, people want something positive to do. People want to give back. They want to have meaning. Coupled with, you know, being relational.
Okay.
So I think,
what's that mean?
So I think about, you know, the experiences of like rocking up to the job centre.
Yeah.
When you're 17 or whatever it is, to, you know, try and maybe find your first job, or going to the housing department because you've had a bit of a drama with your family and, you know, that kind of thing. And the way you're treated, it's like, next, get over there in the queue. You know, basically, you know, you may as well be your what do they call it, national insurance number type thing. And it's like that no, you know, human care or no correct consideration. Everybody, you know, of course, people would want to say that they're, you know, they do good for other people, you know, that they're kind and all of that, but it doesn't play out in services. So for us, it's really about focusing on that dignity, treating people with respect.
Yeah.
You know, as the CEO of Catch22 now, I want to know that all my services are dealing with people with dignity and respect. When people come in the door, they're not dealt with like an inconvenience. Yeah. You know, they're not fobbed off or given like half information, you know. They're taken care of, they're given clarity about what to expect, or when they might hear something, or when they might get back to somebody might get back to them, or, you know, that they're made to feel like a whole person. So being relational is really important, caring about other people.
It seems so simple. I mean,
Sorry.
Like, one of my first jobs was in retail, and they'd really drive the customer service. But of course, that was to sell goods. I mean, we're talking about people's most basic essentials. These are really tough environments for people, particularly because sometimes people have a bad day. And as you say, with the broken windows theory, you know, if the buildings that people work in, if the places they're working in are dirty and not taken care of, people don't feel like they can work well in that kind of job. So, I mean, how do you actually make that happen? So give us a sense of, if we were to use a Catch22 service, or work in a Catch22 service, like what does that look like? Because I remember one thing that really stood out to me is when I visited, I think it was Thameside. Was it Thameside? Prison.
Yeah.
And just kind of seeing how some of our colleagues were working on gangs, and you know, we're talking about like in the prison. Like, tell us a bit about one of the services as an example of how you make this happen.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good example. I'll tell you about a whole service, actually.
Okay, yeah.
Sorry.
Oh, so do you want water?
No,
Should I
it's
get
just, I feel like I'm just coming down with something. I'll be all right.
Okay.
So a great service for this is what I would call community links, actually.
Community links,
So
okay.
this is a good example of like how you can do real good. So Community Links is an organisation that's probably about 40 years old, maybe 42, 43 years old by now. And they're East London-based charity, and they've delivered services for people in the community with the community for 40 years. 5 or 6 years ago, you know, given the changes in funding and the competition and all kinds of things, they were struggling to, you know, keep running. So they came to Catch22 and, you know, working together, you share resources and you know, get a better quality delivery. Now that is based around an old town hall.
Yes, in Canning Town, right?
Canning Town
Yeah,
on
yeah.
Barking Road. That's like a good example of a physical building, you know. And then it's also got lots of different staff in it doing different things, and you know, lots of different partners, and people are trying to do really good. But it was really run down, like really run down, you know. And the town halls, they're listed buildings, so there's only so much you can do with them. And you know, you can imagine the cost of trying to get it into a good state of repair would be quite challenging.
Yeah.
And again, you've got a staff group that are working there, that's their environment every day. You know, they're doing great work, but at the same time, they're hindered by not the most nicest facilities and also tools, you know, computers, resources, to be able to, you know, research for their clients, look, you know, online, all that kind of thing. Everything was just really run down. So on a day-to-day basis, they would have like queues of people come into the building to get advice and support.
Yeah.
So that advice could be, they were funded by some Canary Wharf law firms to provide advice around debt, benefits, health and well-being, even in some respects education and housing. And people would just queue up outside on the road to get their services. It's like insane. But because they're so renowned for the quality of their delivery, for being relational, for caring, for focusing on problem solving and finding the solutions, they were sought after as a service by the community, as somewhere that people would go to get the help that they needed. And there were all kinds of different practitioners in there, from, you know, people who were advisors, benefit advisors, there's lawyers, you know, there's people who work in the health teams who encourage people to get screening and take care of their health. And they just care, you know, and people knew when they went there that they would get the help they needed and they would be treated well. So that service still exists today, and it still does very similar things. It's expanded now though, so not only have we been able to improve the building, the whole entire physical environment, not just for the staff but also for the service users, we've also added new services to it. And we've also combined it with other services in the community. So if you go down there now, you'll find that there's teams there that will help people find work, find jobs. With a particular focus on, you know, building people's digital skills, people's key skills, functional skills, English and maths. All of the kind of advice services are there for, as I said, debt, benefit, housing, all of it. And then there's also, as I said, the health programs. But alongside that now, we also have the justice team who are working there. And they're helping people who are on probation or people who have recently come out of prison, and helping them with their own personal well-being, helping them feel well, helping them feel like they can deal with their issues and move forward. So the investment is included, you know, really finding ways to improve the environment and then to modernise. So there's now a studio there.
Okay, I need to record one of these.
Well, there's a podcast studio there as well. And it's there for mostly for people to use from the community. So young people, there's a college there. We have a couple of colleges in Catch22's group. And young people who are 16 to 25 can go there. They can study courses that support them in a digital kind of career route, creative media kind of route.
Oh, I think I saw some of the videos of that. They look really good.
So the investment enabled that kind of facility to be made that the community can use to progress their own kind of skills, their own, you know, their own careers. Alongside that, there's been a big, massive investment in all of the resources, and that's, you know, the technology that's available in the building, the facilities available to staff, and overall, it's just so much more of a positive kind of service. And that organisation's history is rooted in social justice.
Yeah.
and wanting to make sure that there was the equity and, you know, equality for people in East London. So, you know, that's a good example for me of one of the kind of Catch22 programs. It's not a very specific program like an employability program or a justice program, because people are not you know, they're not boxes. People are whole, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
And if you can create a service that's kind of not one shot fits all, but, you know, people don't have to be passed around organisations and, you know, be brokered off here and there and feel like, you know, they're being fobbed off, and they can get the help and the support they need there and then. Then that's gonna make it easier to help them move past their challenges rather than continuing to perpetuate them. So it's a cluster of services.
Yes.
And it's 3 P's, as I said. It's relational, it's dignity, it's respect, and it's like recognising that environment makes a difference.
It's a wonderful example. I mean, first off, because I'm from that area, I'm born and raised in Plaistow, and Canning Town, I always pass by the town hall, and I think for a lot of people, again, it's like the idea of social justice seems so kind of big, but this is a perfect example of real people being impacted on a daily basis. The importance, as you say, of care. I think you used the word care a couple of times, like the people providing services really care. And even just this idea of service, it's very practical because we're talking about real problems that real people face. I'd love to know a bit about kind of just service provision in general. So, you know, with a lot of the guests we've spoken to, there's different ways of addressing things, right? Like, you know, you've talked about policymakers, you've talked about research, you know, people studying the problems and understanding them so that other people can act on it. Politicians and government who have the power to, you know, make legislation which impacts people nationwide. And then you're talking about a very specific example of in a local community like Canning Town, in a borough like Newham, which often has some of the highest kind of amazing diversity, but also sometimes at times at really high crime rates and poverty rates. I mean, for people considering like where they can contribute, what is it about service provision specifically that makes it different from all those other methods?
I think it's the will and the want to help people.
Okay.
That's where it comes from, isn't it? You know, essentially it's about, you know, meeting a need. Like I recently popped across this Call the Midwife program on BBC, which is an East End kind of thing. And, you know, you go right back then, like, I don't know, 60s maybe, 1960s, and you've got these nuns. It's called, you know, the Nuns of Nonnatus House. And essentially they're midwives, right? And they're helping all these, you know, pregnant women across East End in the 1960s, you know, deliver babies safely. That's a voluntary, essentially it started off as a voluntary service. It's charity, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? And essentially those group of people saw a need in the community and just went to address it. And that's kind of like bones and the basis of genuine service provision. It's about helping meet a need, you know. It's about turning something around which is giving, you know, people, you know, poor lives and poor outcomes. And that for me is the foundation of what service should be. Service provision should be. It should be about helping people move past the things that are, you know, blighting their lives. And how you create that and how you construct that needs to be on the basis of everything we already know. You know, you should. There's no point recreating the wheel. You know, as I said, back to the hundreds of reports around knife crime. You know, we know what we know. So then you use that knowledge to help design things that are going, services that are going to help people. And most importantly, you work with the people to create those. You know, so they can come back and say, you know, that type of support was actually really helpful. That's exactly what I needed. That wasn't too helpful. Let's not do that again. You know, and it's being able to draw on history and draw on what we already know to continue to make sure that the services that we are delivering are actually meeting the need that they're supposed to be delivering. And I guess when you put that in the context of, like, you know, changing policy, you know, big global kind of movements, you know, Me Too, Black Lives Matter, right down to, as you say, how can we inspire the next generation of Martin Luther Kings? It's like, it is on all those kind of different levels, and service delivery plays a part in that. You know, service delivery is the practical stuff that you do on a day-to-day basis that, you know, actually makes a difference. It is that, you know, to a certain degree in some regards, hand-holding, information giving, skill learnt teaching, sharing knowledge. You know, it is that the actual physical, practical, day-to-day things that you can do.
Do you have an example of maybe someone who recently or in your life you've seen life change through some of the Catch22 services?
Absolutely.
I mean, so many. I mean, how many people you impact? Like hundreds of thousands?
It varies, you know. At the moment, we're probably working with around 160 to 180,000. I mean, the stats will come in the summer. It's cumulative throughout the year. But what's the kind of most heartwarming bit is the letters I receive. You know, from parents or from service users. A guy wrote to us recently and he said that he had to write to us because he felt the story it needed to be told. So it's a slightly older guy and he ended up becoming a single father and raising his daughter on his own. And he credits his resilience and his ability to be able to do that and not worry about the stigma back to one of Catch22's reform schools in the 1940s.
The 1940s?
1940s. The guy,
so he's
1950s, sorry. 1940s, 1950s. He's really, really old man now. And he basically, you know, he said, you know, I'm kind of coming to the end of my time. And I wanted to reflect, so I was reflecting on what changed my life. And he wrote to me and he wrote to us and told us that story. So, you know, that goes way back then. But today, like, I'll get letters from parents in our schools saying, you know, if it wasn't for the workers at Catch22, I don't know where we would be. You know, I don't know if my family would still be together. I don't know if my kids would have coped, you know. I don't know if their mental health issues would have reduced, etc. We didn't have any hope. We didn't have any optimism. Our lives are so much better. There's more structure. There's more kind of calmness. There's more kind of, I don't know, well-being in the family home and, you know, that kind of thing. And you get these, like, you know, real genuine examples of the tangible things that the staff have done on a day-to-day basis that some people wouldn't even notice. Like, always made sure my son knew where his peg was, so he didn't feel, left out or lost. And it would just
those
be like
little details,
really little examples of the things that the staff have done that have impacted and left a mark on people and made them feel, you know, that somebody cares. You know, so that we get lots of examples like that, and also going to visit some of the services. So, I mean, I help design the services and, you know, review them. But I also like to go and see how they're doing. Like, I like to talk to the people we work with who use our services to find out what their experience is of it. Like you said, customer service has been a big thing in business and retail for a long time. Like, it's actually really important in our sector that people feel like, you know, they're treated well with dignity. So I go and talk to them and they tell me, they'll tell me, oh, he was awesome, what he did for me, like, he saw me, nobody's ever saw me before, nobody's given me that time, attention or focus, that guidance, they really listened to me, you know, they treated me like a person, they treated me with respect, they were genuinely interested in my well-being, they genuinely were committed to, you know, helping me in my future. There was a lady, we've got a video on our website actually, and she ended up getting a job working on the ambulance phone line, you know, when you call an ambulance, emergency response team. And
that's a tough job sometimes.
No, absolutely. She tells her story and she said, oh my God, the Catch22 worker was just as excited as me when I got the job.
Wow.
You know, and it's like being
in it proper, meaningful relationships, isn't
being
it?
in it together, you know. So yeah, I feel incredibly proud of the work that we do.
I mean, you must be. I mean, as you say, the first time you engaged with Catch22 17, and you've had this rise to become now CEO. You've done so many jobs within the organisation, starting off as a volunteer. I think when I was here, you were just becoming the Chief Operating Officer. I mean, so many different skills that you developed over this time, and skills that you needed to use, you know, designing services and speaking to people and listening and dealing with kind of the fact that it's a big organisation with many staff. You've got your trustees, you've got your on-the-ground folk, you've got your funders, you've got your backers, you've got the policy making team. Like, tell us a bit about the stages of your career, because I think you're a perfect example of someone going back to the very first bits about the injustices facing women, young women, people of colour. You've broken those barriers. Like, I'd love to know. I mean, this is long. It's a long career, but I'm curious to know like the phases for people who might want to follow in your footsteps.
Yeah, so I mean, it's 21 years now, I guess. Wow. Maybe 21 years. 21.
That is commitment.
22 years. Well, it's this thing about is it a job or is it a vocation? And like, genuinely, it must be a vocation, because I don't feel like I'm going to work every day. You know, I feel like I'm going to do something good in the world, and I'm going to make a difference, and I'm extremely privileged to be able to help so many people and work on so many cool things that I care about and that I'm passionate about, you know. So I think that's definitely one of the things that's helped. But in terms of the kind of stages, I think I'll put it into a couple of blocks.
Okay.
So there's the practitioner side of me, right? So the professional, the practitioner, so like the educator, the teacher, the social worker, the youth worker. So for me, my professional background...
person in front of people doing stuff and engaging.
That's it. My professional background is a youth and community worker.
Okay.
So it's like, you know, shaping that kind of me, that, you know, that part of me. How do I relate to people? How do I engage with people? How do I apply the principles and knowledge that's been taught to me through these courses to my day-to-day work? And in order to do that, I became educated. I took my level 1 in youth work, level 2 in youth work, level 3 in youth work, and that went up. That ended up becoming a master's.
Okay.
But before that, I took my degree. I was really lucky to be able to be trained by some of the best leading youth and community work educators in the country at the time. So I went to Brunel University. I worked full-time, and I went to uni in the evenings and weekends, and I did all my modules around that's it, working with young people and all of that. So that was the kind of first part of my career, was just really shaping out my skill base in terms of working with people and helping people, and the professional kind of underpin that sat behind that. The next phase of my career was really focused on kind of leadership and management, I would say. Just call it straight up as simply as what it is. You know, moving from doing the day-to-day activity to coordinating that day-to-day activity amongst others, you know, and taking that lead role in terms of planning programs and planning service delivery, and managing and supervising and supporting others, educating and guiding others, and just understanding nuts and bolts of how, you know, resources are managed, how they're taken care of, you know, business development, essentially, business architecture, you know, staffing, facilities, like health and safety, safeguarding, all of the kind of, you know, things you need to run good services. So that kind of period of leadership and management, and then followed by what I would call business development.
Okay.
And
just with that bit, how did you learn that? Because first off, you kind of had your formal training. How does one transition from a practitioner, and of course you kind of keep that part to you, but then becoming a leader of fellow practitioners and the management side, and working with people from the kind of like senior level? I mean, how did you learn how to do that?
I think this is one of the things that I want to see more of in this organisation under my leadership. And it's for me the best way. I mean, lots of people do it differently, but me the best way is, you know, leading by example. And, you know, good role modelling, and having really good managers yourself. You know,
so recruitment as well.
Yeah, well, I love the medical profession for this. So the model in the medical profession is based on the principles of each one, teach one.
Each one, teach one.
Yeah. So, like, you're a awesome like podcast interviewer, right? Just as an example, random, and then you've got to pass on that skill. It's your duty to pass on that skill based on that knowledge to the next generation. So to make sure that we have a sufficient amount of doctors, surgeons, nurses, they adopt a kind of philosophy of, you know, not only do you learn it and you take it on yourself, you cement it and embed it in yourself by passing it on to someone else.
each one teach one. So there's an
Yeah.
inherent duty in learning from others and passing on. It reminds
Yeah,
you
it's
of
like pay
actually.
it forward.
Yeah, it reminds you of a lord who mentored me, a peer in the House of Lords, and I was like, "Why are you helping me?" I was just really curious, like, why? And he was like, "Well, for him to have reached where he got to, others had helped him, and he
Absolutely.
felt like it was his time to give back." And I feel when I reflect, we can do that not only if you're a lord or a CEO, you can do that at all levels, because there's always someone who's trying to learn and reach that next step.
Well, this is my thing about humanity.
Okay.
You know? You really want to tackle social issues and get underneath real social justice, then everybody has a stake in society. And if you take every single child that's born
Yeah.
and you nurture them, guide them, coach them, help them find their talents, help them find their futures, you'll have a completely way more productive world and a happier society. And you know, you talk about behaviour. A lot of what I talk about and what I believe in is actually behaviours.
Okay.
So right from the kind of like biggest movements to address racial inequality to you know, gender equality, whatever it is, a lot of this comes down to behaviour and the way people behave. You know, so one of the most positive ways that we can behave is by sharing our skills and knowledge with others. And
Teaching, yeah.
but not necessarily just formal academic teaching.
Yeah.
It's teaching in all walks of life. You know, you teach you know, children how to look after the earth and the land, so that
That's
you can
it.
continue. You know, that kind of thing. So I had the beauty of having some really great, you know, leaders and managers around me
Yeah.
who were just really cool with just letting me observe, see, talking with me about
Okay.
techniques, ways. Why do we do that? What does that mean? No. And then just being like, you know, really responsive to that kind of thirst for knowledge.
Interesting. So that, like, just in your day-to-day, in the same way you were being taught, as you said, formally within your courses as a practitioner, you were basically learning on the job by engaging with people who are either more senior than you, peers, people who you're managing. And so the key skill there really is like listening and asking questions, and I guess curiosity and accepting that, like, there's so much to learn, and actually there's people who are more skilled in certain things, and it'll be great to learn from. Is that
It's kind of like an apprenticeship of life, really. It's like
Okay,
it's
apprenticeship of life.
It's like a traditional kind of, you know, it's how I would see apprenticeships actually working.
Yeah,
you know, genuine like recognition that in order for the world to keep turning, you know, we have to keep developing people's skills and capabilities in particular things. And one of the best ways to do that is on the job.
Yeah.
So even with my youth work, like, I was able to really cement my skills by learning from others. For me in my career, the education side has always come second.
Okay.
So delivered youth work, trained to become a youth worker.
I see.
Delivered leadership and management,
Do
trained to leadership and management. So it's what I call about the discipline of theory applied to your day-to-day practice.
discipline of theory. I love that.
I was an intuitive practitioner in a sense. I was an intuitive manager. I knew I could coordinate because I got good planning skills. I like to solve things. You know, I like to organize and make lists. They're natural qualities, you know, as a person. So then I had the opportunity to have the learning, and it was the same throughout my kind of whole career.
Amazing. Really kind of fascinating insights into like your career and how you perceive it, and I think there's so much for our students to learn. I'm just going to check the time. We've got time for maybe one last question or two. I'm curious about what it takes to run Catch22 in terms of services and the scale. Part of that, which we haven't talked about, is investment and money. You know, with the School of Social Justice, we're funded by small donations, as well as the contributions of philanthropists and foundations and trusts, where, you know, commercially learning about how to make a difference, there's not a huge audience as there is wanting to get entertained by comedians, say, for example. But the audiences that we try to reach and impact, they can have huge impact because of the things they learn and then the people they might impact in society. But crucially, the Foundations Trust fund non-profits, which wouldn't have been able to exist had it not been for their support. I mean, for you as the leader of Catch22, why do we need to invest in these kinds of services, particularly in the context that people feel all money should be given to just government, or, I think one of the lessons I learned at Catch22 was this idea of diverse service provision and having innovation and non-profits and a whole range of different types of service providers. But I'm curious to know where you're at now with that kind of...
Such a great question. I think my thinking on it is, as with many others, I guess it's evolved over the years.
Yeah.
Like anybody else is like, why don't we just invest in people and solve these issues and it will all be kind of fine? And the bottom line is there's no short of money in the world and there's no shortage of investment. It's what you choose to do with it.
Wait, just on that, because even just that statement, the fact that you think that way and that is your understanding of the world is big, because a lot of folk think actually there's no money and we can't access it. But having been out there and seen how rich certain people are, how much money there are in certain places, totally agree. I mean, how did you come to that conclusion of abundance in a way?
Well, it's a fascinating one, because we don't have any money, but we all have everything we need. So I don't know, when I was a kid, we didn't have the kind of materialism that you have now. Do you know what I mean? Like, commercialism and consumerism has just gone through the roof.
Yeah.
And the more you want, the more expensive it is. Yeah. So, our young people right now, we're walking around in £70, £80 tracksuits, all grey, with particular ticks on them. Do you know what I mean? That's not cheap.
That's it.
Mobile phones, how much do they cost? It's going to set you back a good 800, 900 quid. That's money in the system. Shell, bless them. I don't want to speak bad about any companies or anything like that. It's not my agenda. But you have to recognise the element of what I would call responsible profiteering and irresponsible profiteering. There is no point having all of us struggle with gas and electric and have all of these government incentives and then post £32 billion profits. I mean, there's no shortage of money in the world. It's what we choose to do with it. And
that's deep.
The philosophy of Catch22 really is public service reform. But for me, it's not just and by public service reform, we mean the services that are delivered for people in communities by public sector organisations such as the government, local authority, housing, social care, social services, those kind of things, are essential services to societies, right? There'll always be a batch of people who will need help at any one time for different reasons, whether that's because of ill health or, whatever it might be. So why don't we set up a set of services which deliver that function and help people move out of those situations as quick as possible? Now, those services were created in a day, the welfare state was created in a day when the population wasn't this big. The internet didn't exist. This level of materialism for, phones, technology, fashion didn't exist. It's based on a structure and a system that was created then. When life was very different. I think post-war, population was a lot less. Life was very different. It's not fit for today. And that's not because there's any disrespect to what they've done or any judgment of what they've done. The bottom line is life isn't the same. So why would you have a service that's the same? You know? And Catch22's approach to that is it doesn't have to be delivered by local authorities or by central government. It doesn't have to be delivered by the public sector. It can be delivered by other organisations. Now you get into this debate about privatisation and being delivered by corporate companies and those corporate companies taking profits out of it. I'm talking about just good quality services for people, purpose driven, on a not profit, not dividend basis, right? So,
and I think that's one detail which is so important, because I remember that was what I discovered in my first few weeks of Catch22. It's like, well, you can have the privatisation of services still delivered by not-for-profits whose purpose is to reinvest any income made into delivering
back into the
better
organisation.
services.
Absolutely. And you think about it, like, we're citizens of this country, of countries, of states, and we've learnt some things. We're educated. We've become educated to a certain degree. We observe. We can use social sciences. We can use education. We can use all of these things. And actually, we can turn around and say, how can we put our thinking caps on and improve that service to make sure that more and more people get help? So it's not just about reform. It's just about continuous evolution. Why? Because as humanity, we've always been evolving.
That's it.
So why do our services not evolve with it? So I think my view really is that a good service, a fair service for a fair price. You know, if the law says we have to pay people, we have to do that safely, we have to have health and safety, got to have these cables, got to pay these taxes and do this, then we need money.
Yes.
Essentially.
Yes.
And it costs money to run organisations, charity or not. It costs money.
Yeah.
So why should we have to do that on the cheap because we're a charity? Let's try to do that where people have good salary, good access to good wages, so that they can live. So, you know, I don't think this is just about public sector. I don't think it's about charity sector.
Yeah.
You know, I think this is about all sectors now, and how we use our resources, you know, as a world.
Amazing.
You know, and therefore that would be my case for investment. If you want a better world, you have to invest in the main resource on this planet, which is humans.
That's why I'll always be a fan of Catch22. Just, you know, what you've espoused there, and in a way, Catch22 proves the need for diverse service delivery.
Absolutely.
And so thank you for sharing that, because there's lots of people who might not even understand that part of things. And I think I definitely learned a lot in my time here. So, and that particular thing was something I learned. I mean, just as we end, are there any final things you want to share with folk who want to be part of this next generation of Martin Luther Kings, or any other form of contributor to achieving social justice, you know, a future Naomi or someone who wants to follow in your footsteps? Do you have any advice or tips? And it could be, you know, fresh out of college, university, or they could actually be someone who's retired and want to change the career or lives. I mean, do you have any final words for them?
Absolutely. I think, you know, regardless of, you know, who you are or where you are on this journey, on this social, you know, your knowledge and your understanding of social justice and your want to commit to it, I would say, you know, regardless of wherever you are or whoever you are, it has to come down to behaviour. You know, if we think about how we behave as human beings and, you know, what we put in and put out, you know, are we putting in harm or are we putting in help? You know, are we putting in curiosity? Are we putting support? What are we putting in? So, to, you know, firstly, understand why you're doing it, what it means to you. And then, secondly, how your own behaviour on a day-to-day basis contributes to social injustice. Yeah, on a very micro to a real macro level.
And how do you do that?
By observing yourself. You know, stepping back and saying, you know, how did I make people feel today? You know, where did I add good? Where did I add value? You know, so just think about your mum or your gran or your uncle or whatever. Like, you know, did you get impatient with him because you were trying to iron your shirt this morning and, you know, rubbish him off and make him feel terrible? Or did you treat him with, you know, dignity and respect and, you know, listen to him and give him credibility? It's how we behave. You know, step back and reflect on how you behave every day. Do you still throw rubbish on the floor? You know, that kind of thing, you know, knowing that the world is, you know, struggling from an environmental context. So yeah, be cognizant of your own behaviour and, you know, what you're putting into the world and what you're taking out from it. So yeah, definitely think about the reasons why you're doing it. Think about your own behaviour, your own impact, and like team up with others.
Okay.
Find some
Get
like-minded
involved.
people.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's over 172,000 charities or something in the UK. I don't think we need any more. I think whatever your cause or whatever it is that you want to address, you'll find one that's like-minded, or you'll find somebody else who has that similar kind of passion. So yeah, you know, these things to say. The more of you that are doing this, the more of you that are involved, the better it is. And you know, you learn from them. You'll learn from each other. So, you know, keep learning, and then keep challenging.
This has been a wonderful conversation, and I think is right now in the present a real strong reminder about why we felt this was necessary to have conversations like this, because you just shared so much of your wisdom and experience, plus challenge some of the thinking that I have, and I'm sure some of the viewers have, and really pushed us to carry on going. You talked about the need to evolve. I look forward to seeing how Catch22 and yourself evolve as a leader as well over the next few years and over the near and distant future. And I just want to say thank you from the School of Social Justice for your time we've learned a lot. So thanks.
Thank you for having me.
This educational content is absolutely free. Why? Because our vision is a world where anybody, no matter their background, can learn how to make a difference. To keep going, we need your help. Can you become our next patron? Can you help us reach 2,500 patrons? I really hope so. Whatever the case, hope you learned something today, and sending you peace and love. Let's keep learning.